Hare Krishna. Can you hear my voice? Am I audible? Okay, let's start. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshadarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. We have been discussing from the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We did complete the 12th chapter of the fifth canto, and today we'll be starting with the 13th chapter. And yesterday we did do a recap of the 12th chapter, and we did spend the rest of the time discussing Q&A. So today we will directly start with the 13th chapter. So towards the end of the 12th chapter, Jadabharata, while instructing Rahuguna, he mentioned in the last verse, Tasman naro asanga susanga jata jnana asina iha eva vivirkna moha harintadiha katana shrutabhyam labda smritir yati atiparam advanaha. So he says, the cutting up illusion by the sword of knowledge. And where will that sword of knowledge come from? Arising from detachment from matter and attachment to devotees. Tasmad naro asanga susanga jata jnana asina iha eva vivrkna mohaha. And then labda smritihi, and then gaining remembrance of the Lord. How? Katana shrutabhyam, by hearing and speaking about Krishna, Harim Tadiha, the pastimes of Krishna. Tasmad naraha yati atipara madvanaha. By this, a person attains the Lord at the end of samsara. So this is what he had mentioned. So now, because he had spoken about detachment from matter, so he is going to talk about the nature of this material world in this next two chapter. In this one chapter, and then Shukadev Goswami will explain that chapter in the next chapter. I mean, explain what, because he's going to present about the nature of this material world, the nature of samsara in an allegorical way. So we already saw some many allegorical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this will be another allegorical section. So that is what this chapter is going to talk about. So let's start with the 13th chapter. The 13th chapter is titled as the Forest of Material Enjoyment. Okay. It is called as the Forest of Material Enjoyment. So Jadabharata is going to present about uh, the reality of this material world, what one can expect and what one cannot expect from this material world. He is going to present about the nature of this material world through the allegorical story. And he speaks this to uh, generate detachment. So apart from uh, apart from understanding the nature of Krishna, the nature of bhakti, the nature of the qualities of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna, which is all very important. But apart from that, it is also needed to hear about the nature of this material world and how material world has nothing substantial to offer in the long run. So therefore, even though we may get some minimal pleasure, which seems to be very tangible right now at this conditioned state of our life. But we should understand that, just like we do here, when we eat sweets, even though we are relishing sweets, we do tend to hear about the nature of diabetes and how in future this overconsumption of this sweet or salt, how it is going to detrimentally affect our body in future. We do hear about it. Okay. So therefore, Similarly, while pursuing devotional service, it is important to every once in a while hear about the insubstantial nature of the pleasure that is available uh, in this material world and the cost that we need to pay, the cost that we need to pay for uh, enjoying this material world. Hmm. So this is very important to hear. भुक्तभोगा परित्यक्ता दृष्टदोषा च नित्यशः नेश्वरस्य अशुभं दत्ते स्वे महिम्नि स्थितस्य च. So Bhukta Parityakta. So a person who has enjoyed this material world and given it up. How? Drishta dosha. By seeing the nature of the faulty nature of material sense enjoyment. By seeing the faulty nature of material sense enjoyment, one gives it up. Drishta dosha. It is important. It is important to see the faulty nature of material sense enjoyment. Okay. So, but that is not sufficient. Swemahimni stitasya cha. Uh, So it is not that people who smoke do not know the ill effects of smoking. They do know, but still they are addicted. So it is not just sufficient to know about the insubstantial nature of this material world, but it is also important that one understands the alternative reality, which is substantial, which is substantial. Okay. So that is the meaning of Swemahimni Stitasya cha. So the living entity, apart from hearing about the dangers of material enjoyment, should actually sufficiently hear about the glories of the Nama Rupa Guna Leela of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only then he will get the strength to give up the material enjoyment in this world. So, Bhukta Bhoga Parityakta Drishta Dosha cha Nityashah Neshwarasya Ashubham Datte Sve Mahimni Stitasya cha. So, this is very important. So, therefore, Mother Devahuti also, after hearing about the nature of bhakti in general and understanding the glories of bhakti in comparison to the paths of karma, jnana, yoga, etc., she again asked Kapila Dev three questions. She asked, please speak more about the practice of bhakti. How is bhakti to be practiced? Okay. And what kind of practice is bona fide practice? What kind of practice is not bona fide practice? Are there gradations in practice of bhakti? All of that she wants to know. This is the first question that she asked. The second question that she asked is that please speak about the nature of time. And the third question that she asked is please speak about the nature of samsara, the material existence, this the nature of samsara. So, why she asked these three questions? Of course, you need to know bhakti means that which looks like bhakti, that which is bona fide bhakti, that which is not bona fide, that which is high quality bhakti, that which is not high quality bhakti. All of that you need to know so that you engage in the right kind of practice. So for that, she asks about more about the practice of bhakti. And apart from that, she also asks about the nature of time. Why? Once one understands the relentless nature of time, then one will practice bhakti with a sense of urgency. Okay, with a sense of urgency to capitalize with uh, not that the living entity is temporary, the living entity is eternal, but the opportunities that the living entity may get to practice bhakti may be limited. So therefore, one needs to take it up with a sense of urgency. With a sense of urgency. Okay. So for that, she asks about the nature of time, the relentless nature of time. And she also asks about samsara. Why she asks about samsara? She asks about samsara so that bhakti can be practiced with detachment. Because um, स्यात् कृष्णनामचरितादिसिताप्य विद्या पित्तोपतप्तरसनस्य न रोचिकानु किन्तु आदराद् अनुदिनं खलु सैव जुष्टा स्वाद्वी क्रमाद् भवति. Because the pleasure of bhakti, the tangible pleasure of bhakti, superior to material sense enjoyment, can be developed only gradually. In the beginning, our senses are not so attracted to the Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela of Krishna. So it takes some time because avidya pittopatapta rasanasya na rochikano. Because the senses are coated with avidya. Avidya pitto pitta upatapta rasanasya na rochikano. So therefore, till we develop that higher taste, uh, there has to be adarad anudinam kalusaiva jushta. There has to be regulated, respectful practice of devotional service by force. Little bit of force is needed. Okay. And the major obstacle to that force is actually our material attachments. Or material attachments. So therefore, to some extent, to hear about the intangible nature of the material attachments and how they actually act as an obstacle to our fast progress on the path of bhakti, uh, it is important that we hear these kind of subject matters. Of course, sometimes devotees, constantly keep hearing about the nature of the material world, the nature of the opposite gender, the nature of the opposite sex, how it acts as a trap. It is important we hear about these things. But sometimes you, it has to be balanced. It has to be balanced. Otherwise, bhakti cannot be practiced by fear. With fear as the stimulus. Hey, you know what? You will fall down, you will fall down, you will fall down, you will fall down. It is a very unhealthy mode to practice bhakti uh, with the while overcome by the fear of falling down. That should not be the prime impetus. So, what is a healthy balance of how much should we hear about the Nama Rupa Guna Leela glorification of the Nama Rupa Guna Leela of Krishna, and how much we should hear about the dangers of the material world and the material attachments. The right balance is the balance presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. The balance presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. See the percentage of um, uh, time when are chapters where the glories of Nama Rupa Guna Leela is presented, glories of association is presented, and in how many chapters or in how many verses, this warning is there. So that is a very reasonable balance. That is a very reasonable balance. Anyways, so here he is going to speak about the nature of this material world, the nature of samsara, in order to generate that detachment. So, Jadabharata continues. Brahmana uvacha duratyaye dvanyajaya niveshito rajastamas sattva vibhakta karmadrik sa esha sartorta parah paribhraman bhavatavim yati na sharma vindati. So, sartaha means the merchant. The merchant. Rajas tamas sattva vibhakta karmadrik. who sees only obligation to scriptural actions divided into rajas, tamas, and sattva, which means he is a person who is only attached to the Dharma Shastras. He is only dedicated to following the Dharma Shastras. That is what it means. Okay. Which says what should be done, what should not be done. If you do this, what you will get. If you do that, what you will not get. Okay. So here is a person who is completely dedicated to um, uh, who sees only obligation to scriptural actions divided into rajas, tamas, and sattva. Saha ajaya, who out of ignorance, advani niveshitah, is fixed on the path of material enjoyment. Hmm. Okay. And what is the nature of material enjoyment? Duratyaye, which is difficult to cross. Arthaparaha, and who is absorbed in material acquisition. Paribrahman, while wandering about. Bhava atavim yati, he comes to the forest of material life. Na sharma vindati, but cannot enjoy happiness. So, here if you see, right from the beginning, the acharyas will explain the allegory in their commentaries. Okay. But the way Jadabharata is presenting to Rahugana, it is not so obvious. What he is talking about will not be so obvious. So therefore, at the end of this chapter, Rahugana will seek clarification of all that was spoken because he has a doubt that maybe this definitely there is some allegorical, this is an allegorical presentation and there must be a deeper meaning to it. So he seeks to understand the deeper meaning of the allegory presented by, sorry, not Rahuguna, Parikshit Maharaj, as Shukadev Goswami, and Shukadev Goswami will explain this allegory in the next chapter. Okay. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti summarizing this chapter, he says, in the 13th chapter, by describing the forest of the material world, Bharata puts the king on the horse of detachment so that the king will cross over it. The last verse of the previous chapter mentioned crossing over the material life. What is that path and what is the traveler and who is the traveler on the path? This chapter answers. He sees the activities divided into tamas, rajas, and sattva as obligatory because of ignorance on the difficult to cross path of pravritti marga. Okay. So the whole taking up to the pravritti marga itself is out of ignorance. So now ignorance is a term which is very relative. Okay. Sometimes it is used in an absolute sense, sometimes it is used in a relative sense. Okay. So now if you see, a person who has material desires is in ignorance. Okay. Now, amongst those who have material desires, you may say knowledgeable is that person who tries to fulfill those material desires by following the Shastras. But ignorant is that person who tries to enjoy it by his own endeavor, not following the Shastras. So here, when you see the usage of the word ignorance it means that one who is ignorant of the importance of following the Shastras. Here, when we talk about Shastras, we are talking about the Dharma Shastras, and which talks about Sakama Karma. Okay, which talks about Sakama Karma. Whereas, so in this context, if you see, you call the person who follows the Sakama Karma Shastras as knowledgeable, and an outright materialist not following the Shastras to be ignorant. So, but on the other hand, when we talk about Nishkama Karma and Sakama Karma, the Sakama Karma Yogi who is following the Sakama Karma Shastras is said to be ignorant. So here the meaning of the word ignorant means ignorant of the higher goal of following karma. The higher goal of following karma is to attain liberation. Hmm. is to attain liberation. So therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Durena hi avaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanamanvicha kripanaha falahetava. So he's talking about one who engages in the falahetava karma, sakama karma, to be a kripana. Kripana in one sense means unintelligent. Okay, unintelligent. So you see here, that person who was glorified to be intelligent is now called unintelligent or ignorant. So when he was said to be knowledgeable, he was knowledgeable about the importance of the Vedas. Now when he is called ignorant, he is called as ignorant because he does not understand the higher utility of karma. The higher utility, he is ignorant of the higher utility of karma. He is not understanding that by performing that same karma, instead of getting material enjoyment, one can aspire for liberation. Okay. So now, the Nishkama Karma Yogi is said to be intelligent. The Sakama Karma Yogi is said to be unintelligent or ignorant. Now, when you are talking about bhakti, a person who is engaged in karma is said to be unintelligent. Naishkarmyam api achyutabhava varjitam. Not that. What is that? So many verses. Varnashramacharavata. Dharmasvanushthita pumsam vishvaksena katasuyah na utpadayed yadiratim shramayeva hi kevalam. Shramayeva hi kevalam. So, such a person who engages in varnashrama, even though it may be for liberation, he is said to be ignorant because he is ignorant of the higher path of bhakti and the higher goal of prema. So, this ignorant and intelligent are very relative terms, contextual terms. Okay, they are very relative terms and very contextual terms. It varies from context to context. Okay, so in this case, this person is said to be ignorant. Okay, so he is ignorant even though he is engaged in diligently following the Dharma Shastras. Okay, just like, and that eventually he will say that, oh Rahuguna, you are that ignorant traveler. No, he is not ignorant. He is well read. He is well read, but he is well read in the Dharma Shastras. So if he is well read in the Dharma Shastras, why is um, uh, uh, that well read in Dharma Shastras means why is he called ignorant? He is ignorant of the ultimate goal of prema and the means to attain that goal, which is bhakti. So Sartaha is well known as a wealthy merchant. Sa Artaha, one who possesses a lot of wealth. Medini says, Sarto Vanika Samuhe Syat. Sartha means a gathering of merchants. All the jivas in the world are like merchants interested in material acquisition. Artha Paraha. The explanation of all these terms will be given in the next chapter. However, to make understanding easier, some explanation is given here. So the acharyas will decode this whole allegory in their purport in this chapter only. But Parikshit Maharaj will get explanation of this allegory only in the next chapter. Only in the next chapter. So, yasyamime shannara dasyavah sartam vilumpanti kunayakam balat gomaya yatra haranti sartikam pramattama vishyayato mrikaha. Very scary presentation here. Scary allegory also. O king, Yasyam in the forest. So he's describing that forest, which the merchant enters that forest. What is the nature of that forest? He says, Ime Shad Dasyavaha. There are 6 plunderers in this forest. Sartam Vilumpanti. They plunder the merchant. Kunayakam. And this merchant has received bad advice. Kunayakam. Yatra, and in that forest, Gomayavo Balad Avishya. The jackals enter his house by force. Haranti Pramattam Sartikam, and they plunder the inattentive merchant. Yata Uranam Vrikaha, just as wolves steal sheep. In that forest, the jackals enter his house by force and plunder the inattentive merchant, just as wolves steal sheep. So he says the plunderers are the senses. Okay. Six plunderers are the five Gyanendriyas and the sixth is mind. Okay. They plunder the wealth from the jiva whose intelligence is like a bad chariot driver. Kunayakam. So the intelligence is poor. What is a poor intelligence? A poor intelligence is that which does not have the strength to control the mind and the senses. And it becomes controlled, rather, it becomes controlled by them. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnavam ivambasi. Uh, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that that even one of the senses which wanders around uh, will pull the mind. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidiyate tadasya harati pragyam, and then that mind will control or capture the intelligence. Vayurnavam ivambasi, just like a boat which is unfettered will be blown away by the winds here and there. In the same way, the jiva will be controlled by the uncontrolled senses and mind, which will control the intelligence, which will eventually control the jiva or the destiny of the jiva. So they plunder the wealth from the jiva whose intelligence is like a bad chariot driver, though the wealth is actually meant for serving the Lord but is used for his enjoyment. Wife and sons who are like jackals plunder the merchant who is inattentive to spiritual goals and possesses a treasure of food and clothing. So the family members are said to be jackals. Of course, we do understand that on the path of bhakti, uh, it is not exactly like this talks about the general tendency, but it is not that all family members are jackals. It's not that all family members are jackals, and I am an innocent person because we are also a family member only. Okay, so if they are jackals to us, we may be also acting as jackals for them. Okay. So wife and sons who are like jackals plunder the merchant who is inattentive to spiritual goals and possesses a treasure of food and clothing. Avishya means they enter his heart, which is like a house. Puranam means sheep. Okay. Okay, we have reached 100. Let me just share the uh, just give me 1 second. I will just share the link and then I'll come back. Okay, so let's continue. Sorry, we are in the 13th chapter. Okay, then. प्रभूतवीरुत्तृणगुल्मगह्वरे कठोरदंशैर्मशकैरुपद्रुतः क्वचित्तु गन्धर्वपुरं प्रपश्यति क्वचिच्चाशुरयोल्मुखग्रहम्. Okay, so he says that Mashakair upadrutaha, afflicted by mosquitoes, Katora damshair, with harsh biting, Prabhuta gahware, in dense bowers, Virut gulma, afflicted by mosquitoes with harsh biting in dense bowers of shrubs, grass, and vines. Kvachittu Gandharva Puram Prapashyati. So he sometimes sees a city in the sky. Kvachit Graham. And sometimes he sees ghosts. Ashuraya. Moving very quickly. Ulmuka. In the moving very quickly in the sky like a meteor. Okay. So he describes this. So afflicted by mosquitoes with harsh biting in dense bowers of shrubs, grass, and vines. He sometimes sees a city in the sky and sometimes he sees ghosts moving quickly in the sky like a meteor. What does this mean? What are the mosquitoes? What are the dense bowers of shrubs, grass, and vines? And what is that city that he sees in the sky? And what are the ghosts that he sees? In his house, which is like a bower. So the bower is the house. Okay. Abundant in material actions like dense shrubs. Okay. So the shrubs is material actions. Okay. The body and house are temporary, like the city in the sky. So the city in the sky are body and house. Okay. He sees the city in the sky as if it were real and permanent. Prapashyati. So in the same way, he sees um, uh, he sees you know this body and house to be permanent. Sometimes he sees pishachas who take the Sometimes he sees pishachas who take the form of firebrands and move quickly in the sky. This refers to seeing gold, which he regards as valuable. So the ghost is gold. So moving quickly in the sky, the rate of gold also moves quickly, like the ghost in the sky, like meteor. Okay, there is no, okay, sorry. He is disturbed by evil men who are like mosquitoes. Sorry, I missed it out. So the evil men are compared to mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. So it's describing the material existence through various allegorical things. So the bower is the house, the shrubs are the material actions, and the city in the evil men whom he will have to meet and deal with their evil plans and evil actions against him are compared to the mosquitoes. And then Okay. Then he talks about the city in the sky, which is the house and the body. The city in the sky, due to various cloud formations, it only is temporary. Immediately the cloud formation changes, just like the body changes, but someone takes it to be eternal. Okay. And the ghosts in the sky, which move like a meteor, is compared to the gold. Okay. Then निवासतो यद्द्रविणात्मबुद्धिस्ततस्ततो धावति भो अटव्यां क्वचिच्च वात्योत्थितपांशु धूम्रा दिशो न जानाति रजस्वलाक्षः. O king, nivasatoya dravina atma buddhi, thinking that the house, water, and wealth are his. Tatastato dhavati atavyam, he runs here and there in the forest. He runs here and there in the forest. Kvachit dhumra pamshu, sometimes covered with dirt. Vatya uttita, raised by a whirlwind. Rajasvalakshaha, his eyes blinded by dust. Dishona janati, he does not know the directions. So in this verse, there is a description of, uh, the merchant running here and there in this forest, thinking that his house, water, wealth are his, and sometimes there is a description of his being covered with dust, raised by a whirlwind, and his eyes becoming blinded by that dust, and he does not know the directions. So what does this mean? So thinking that house and wealth are his, he runs here and there. He becomes covered by the impulses of lust because of a woman. So this is compared to running here and there is due to the lust because of a woman. This is comparable to being covered by dirt raised by a whirlwind. One lacks clarity. One loses the discrimination of what is right and what is wrong. When one gets caught up in, especially the attraction to the opposite sex. So the dust is lust. D-U-S-T, L-U-S-T. Okay, so his eyes blinded by lust, he does not know what the devatas of the direction, that the devatas of the direction are witness to his actions. So that is the meaning to Dishona Janati. He does not know the directions, means he does not know that the Dig devatas are watching our actions and we are going to get punished accordingly. But because of his complete absorption in trying to enjoy the association of the opposite sex, he does not see it. Adrishya jhilli swanakarna shula uluka vagbir vyatitantaratma apunya vrikshan shrayate kshudhartito marichito yanya vidhavati kvachit. Vyatitantaratma, when his mind is disturbed, uluka vagbihi, by the sound of the owls. Sometimes because he is in the forest and when he is trying to take rest at night, the owls will start shrieking, they will create their shrieking sound and his mind will become disturbed by that shrieking sound. Not only that, adrishya jilli swana karnashula, the piercing cries of invisible crickets. So crickets are like insects which create very shrill sound. But you generally cannot see the crickets. Why? Anyone knows? You will only see the sound, but it's very hard to see the cricket. That insect cricket. You know why? Yeah. Because of the color. Because it camouflages with the with the color of the tree barks. It almost camouflages. So you will not be able to see it. You will just hear the sound. Uh, So, so sometimes his mind is disturbed due to the sound of the owls and sometimes due to the piercing cries of the crickets. Kshudarpito, and afflicted by hunger, apunya vrikshan shrayate. He takes sometimes shelter of impious trees. You know what are impious trees? Impious trees are those which cannot provide anything, like those which cannot provide edible fruits or vegetables, or sometimes they provide some fruits but which are poisonous. Apunya vrikshan. Apunya vrikshan. Shrayate. Sometimes he goes and takes shelter of these kind of impious trees. Marichi toyani abhidavati kuchit. And sometimes he runs after a mirage of water. Okay. So what are they? What are they? So here it says, his ears are pierced by the sharp language of detested speakers he does not see. People who may. So this is like the sound of the crickets. People who spread rumors about you, people who speak behind your back, criticize you behind your back. They are compared to Adrishya Jelly, whose sounds are very shrill, but you cannot see them because they are speaking behind you. His mind is afflicted by the words of the detested speakers he can see, who are like the owls. So some people speak in front of him very harsh words. They are compared to the owls whom he can see. And some people speak behind his back. They are compared to the crickets, whom we cannot see. Okay, just give me 1 second. He goes to sinful people who are like impious trees to beg. Even the shade or shelter of such persons is a cause of sin. Sometimes he begs from uncharitable persons who give nothing. They are like mirages of water. Okay. So, impious trees are sinful people. And uncharitable and mirage is compared to uncharitable persons. So sometimes when we when we want some help, when we are shuddhartitah, when we are hungry. So in this particular context, when the living entity is in need of some wealth or some facility, uh, he may go to either impious people or uncharitable people. So impious people, in the name of charity, will give you wealth which is poisoned. Just like these impious trees have fruit, but that fruit is not edible, it's a poisonous fruit. You eat it, you will die, or you will fall sick. So, in the same way, the traveler on this path of on this forest of material enjoyment, when sometimes he becomes afflicted by hunger, he approaches these impious trees. Okay. So, are the living entity who is afflicted with the need of wealth, he may approach impious persons who may give in charity, but by accepting the charity, the person gets all kind of bad karma. Okay, he gets all kind of bad karma. Or sometimes they approach uncharitable persons, which is compared to a mirage, who will not give. And they will say, come tomorrow, come tomorrow, come tomorrow, come tomorrow, and that they will never give money. Okay, or they will never give any help. Sometimes he begs from uncharitable persons who give nothing. They are like mirages of water. Kvachid vitoya sarito biyati parasparam chalashate nirandah asadya davam kvachidagnitapto nirvidyate kvachayakshair hritasuhu. Kvachid vitoyaha sarito abhiyati. Sometimes he jumps in waterless rivers. So, I mean, which means he is going to injure himself. Nirandaha. And sometimes without food, parasparam cha alashate. He desires food from relatives. Kvachit davam asadya. Sometimes encountering a forest fire. Agni taptaha. He becomes burnt by that fire. Kvacha yakshair hrita asuhu. And sometimes when his wealth is stolen by yakshas, nirvidyate, he falls into despair. He starts lamenting. So what is the waterless river? And what is that food? And who are the relatives from whom he desires food? And what is that forest fire by which he gets burnt? And who are the yakshas who steal his wealth? And what is that wealth? Okay. He says, he becomes immediately unhappy by breaking his limbs when he jumps into a waterless river but gets no water. This means he goes to atheists who gives misery in this and the next world. Okay. So jumping into a waterless river is approaching the atheists for health, especially mental anxiety. When we are in mental anxiety or some emotional anxiety, whatever it is, we may approach atheistic people for help. Okay. And such people will give their atheistic philosophy and take our spirituality away from us. Okay. So this is compared to jumping into a waterless river. You, you jump into a river because you wish to cool down your body and have some enjoyment of swimming in the river. But when you jump into a waterless river, you only break your limbs. Similarly, when you approach these atheistic people, you approach them so that you get some relief from your problems. But in the end, we end up breaking our limbs, which means our faith in the Supreme Lord. Instead of nirandaha, sometimes nirannaha is found. It has the same meaning. Andaha, annaha has the same meaning. Food. Without food, he desires it from others. He comes to a house which gives suffering like a forest fire. So this is relatives or other people, and food is food, apparently. This is not so much of a allegory here. And the house is compared to a forest fire. He comes to a house which gives suffering like a forest fire. He becomes despondent, burnt by the fire of lamentation. He whose wealth, dear like life, has been stolen by kings who are like yakshas and rakshasas, becomes despondent, thinking, how unfortunate I am without wealth. So sometimes, you know, the government may take away your land because it is in a prime locality, and they may refuse to remunerate you properly, okay, for that land. So these kings who may take away your wealth, they are compared to uh, the yakshas and rakshasas. शूरैर्हृतस्व क्वच निर्विण्णचेताः शोचन् विमुह्यन् उपयाति कश्मलम् क्वचिच्च गन्धर्वपुरं प्रविष्टः प्रमोदते निर्वृतवन्मुहूर्तम्. Shurairhritaswaha, with his possession stolen by enemies, Kvacha nirvinna chetaha, sometimes with a depressed heart, Shochan and lamentation, Vimukhyan in great bewilderment, Upayati Kashmalam, he faints. Kvachitcha Gandharva Puram Pravishtahan, at some other time entering an imaginary city, Pramodate Muhurtam, he enjoys for a moment, Nirvritavad, as if fully satisfied. He's not satisfied. So sometimes his possessions are stolen by enemies, and sometimes with a depressed heart and lamentation, in great bewilderment he faints, and sometimes entering an imaginary city, he enjoys for a moment as if fully satisfied. So having his desires fulfilled in terms of sons, wife, wealth, and power is like entering an imaginary Gandharva city. Okay. So trying to fulfill one's desires through one's son's wife, wealth, and power is like entering an imaginary Gandharva city. Chalan kvachit kantaka sharkarangrir nagaru rukshur vimana ivaste pade pade bhyantaravakshninarditah kautumbika krudyati vaijanaya. Kantaka Sharkara Angrihi, his feet becomes pierced by thorns. Chalan Kvachit, and he wanders about. Naga Arurukshuhu, wanting to climb a hill. Pade Pade Vimana Iva Aste, he becomes disappointed step by step because sometimes pebbles, sometimes some thorns, sometimes he is just tired. Abhyantara Vakhnina Arditaha, and pained by the fire of digestion. Kautumbikaha, living with his family. Krudyati vai janaya, he becomes angry at his family members. So this happens sometimes when you become very distressed due to some other reason, you become angry on those people who are very close to you. This is natural. So desiring to climb a high mountain means desiring fame by marrying his daughters and sons. So he wants to marry off his daughters and sons, and in very good families, and by that he wants to become very famous. That is compared to climbing a high mountain. Desiring to do this, he becomes depressed, thinking, how can I accomplish this? I don't have sufficient money. I need little more money. His feet becomes cut by thorns because he has no shoes. This indicates that he becomes defeated by obstacles because he has no assistance, and the fire within is the fire of digestion. Okay, I think we will pause here and see if there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share, ask, add. Some things in the chat box, let's take them first, and then we will open up for further discussion. Okay, there is a summary here. Mother Devahuti asked 3 questions from Kapila Dev. Nature of Bhakti, she asks to identify pure from mixed Bhakti. She asks about time to invoke a sense of urgency in our practice. And she asks about samsara, that Bhakti can be practiced with detachment. Since we are deceased Atma, and it serves a good purpose to keep us aware and inspired. Srimad Bhagavatam presents a very healthy balance of dangers of material attractions and attachments with Sri Harikatha. Correct. Very nice. So that verse, Bhukta Bhoga Parityakta. So Shamsundaran Baudas. I am neither satiated with material enjoyment nor sufficiently attracted to the devotional service of their lordships. The success seems far away. I am falling out on the easiest way, that is material sense enjoyment, which also seems not available in the way I want. Hence, I am very morose of not getting enjoyment either way. The knowledge of time factor is only inducing fear of loss, a typical materialistic state. How can I get over? Well, whenever we are hopeless, the only solution is the association of Vaishnavas. The only way one can gain hope in devotional life is the association of Vaishnavas. Uh, And in the association of Vaishnavas also, uh, the association has to be like-minded. Sajatiya ashe snigde sadhu sangasvatovare. Hmm. There has to be like-mindedness. There has to be an affectionate bonding where he is actually a genuine well-wisher. Hmm. He is a genuine well-wisher and really wants to help us. Hmm. Uh, and he has to be a devotee and preferably more advanced than us so that he can guide us properly. So this is very important. Oftentimes we do feel hopeless. We do feel hopeless. But the only people who can reinforce that hope and reinstate it in a very high level is the association of Vaishnavas. So in their association, we can borrow strength, we can borrow inspiration, we can borrow enthusiasm, we can borrow determination, uh, we can borrow uh, everything. And we don't have to return it back. We don't have to return it back. And there is no EMI or anything. Whatever you borrow is yours. Whatever you borrow is yours. You are not expected to give it back. And guess what? If you give it back, you get more. If you give it back, you get more. So that way, the only solution, the one-stop solution for all problems is actually good association. So when that good association is there, and so therefore the only worthy investment, the only worthy investment is that one can do on the path of spiritual life is to invest in developing meaningful, affectionate relationships with other Vaishnavas, at least a few of them. Then there is hope. Otherwise, alone we cannot fight. And guess what? We are not expected to fight alone. Oftentimes people think that, I am expected to fight alone. No need. No need. Ultimately, Krishna does not uh, emphasize that you have to not copy in your exam paper. He says, write the exam paper properly. If you cannot write it yourself, copy it from the person sitting next to you. Copy it from the person sitting next to you. I never insist. I never insisted that it has to be a closed book exam. It is, it is an open book exam. What to speak of open book exam? It is open exam. You don't have to just look at your book. You look at the answer sheet of your fellow student and write the answer. In fact, the invigilator is recommending. The invigilator is recommending. Look, by yourself, you are not writing the right answer. Please borrow the answer sheet of your neighbor and copy it. It is highly recommended. So, oftentimes we feel a lack of hope in our devotional practices because we think that ultimately I have to uh, fly my own plane. Yes, of course, I have to fly my own plane, but we can always take help to fly our own plane. And that is highly recommended. So, lack of hope is because we have not sufficiently invested in meaningful relationships with Vaishnavas. So when that is there, all problems are solved. So that's the easiest way to get over this thing. Okay, what else? Okay, Govindari Prabhu says, atheists are shallow. No wonder the seekers of depth are left undrenched if you are lucky, and harmed if you are not lucky. Never reveal your heart to the non-devotees. Yes, that is true. Yeah, we should never reveal our heart to the non-devotees. Okay. In 15.13.1, what is the wealth which is stolen? Our spiritual credits, they are the wealth that is stolen. Okay. Plagiarism is condemned in material things, whereas it is recommended in spiritual endeavor. Yeah. So plagiarism means you take someone else's, okay, but and claim that it is yours. Whereas in the spiritual life, uh, there is no value to that which you say that it is originally mine. No value. Uh, Only that which you borrow from the parampara has value. Your own thing has absolutely no value. Even if you give it free of cost, no one wants it. And you borrow something from the parampara, people are willing to pay you to take it, okay, even though it is not yours. So the point is, spiritual life is the um, spiritual life is the path in which you should never think of reinventing the wheel. At least, even in the material life, reinventing the wheel is a futile endeavor. Uh, in the material life, reinventing the wheel is a futile endeavor. In spiritual life, reinventing the wheel is a highly dangerous endeavor. Okay. It is a very counterproductive endeavor. In the material life, if you reinvent the wheel, you are just wasting time. Okay. But in the spiritual endeavors, if you are reinventing the wheel, uh, yeah, you are actually spoiling our devotional life. Yeah, Krishna is so merciful, but our mental concoctions keep us away from devotees. Our ego is our biggest enemy. Yeah, I agree. Very much true. Okay, if there are no further discussion points, comments, or questions, maybe we can cover a few more verses. Okay. क्वचिन्निगीर्णो अजगराहिना जनो नावैति किञ्चित् विपिने पविद्धः दष्टस्मशेते क्वचदन्दशूकैर् andondakoope patitastamishre. Sometimes he is swallowed by a python and loses consciousness. Sometimes, not woken up by friends, he is bitten by a snake in the forest while he sleeps. Sometimes, in blindness, he falls into a dark blind well. Very heavy section. Relentless. Okay. Swallowed by a python means he goes to sleep. Okay. Not woken up by friends means he is afflicted by evil persons like snakes. Not woken up by friends, he is afflicted by evil persons like snakes. Blind without discrimination, he falls into illusion like a blind well covered by darkness, which is filled by misery. Karhismachit shudra rasam vichinvams tanmakshikabhyatito vimanah tatratikrichrat pratilabdamano balad vilumpantyatam tatonye. Sometimes, searching for a little honey, he is bitten by bees. Disgraced, he finally obtains it with great difficulty, but by force others steal it from him. So sometimes he looks at a beehive and big beehive. He really gets the desire to taste that honey. So somehow he tries to take that honeycomb or that beehive, and he is stuck by the uh, bees, honeybees, and he is in pain. But still, with great endeavor, he thinks that, anyways, I have been stung a lot. What is the point in getting stung and not enjoying the honey? I might as well tolerate the sting and at least taste the honey. So he takes that honey. He finally obtains it with great difficulty. But some other people come by force and they steal it from him. They steal it from him. So the insignificant honey is another person's wife. Okay. So he suffers disgraced by the husband and the brothers who are like bees biting. So when tries to uh, he tries to establish a relationship with another person's wife, okay, and he is disgraced by the husband and brothers. So he thinks, so if by great effort, by spending a lot of money, he obtains the woman and enjoys her, someone else steals her. Why? Because the woman is of bad character. So she left her own husband and came to you. You should know that she can leave you and go to someone else. So somehow, with great effort, he he tolerates their criticism and pays them money and somehow gets that woman, and someone else steals. Then again he spends money to get a woman and someone else steals her. क्वचिच्च शीतातपवातवर्ष प्रतिक्रियां कर्तुमनीश आस्ते क्वचिन्मितो विपणन्यच्च किञ्चित् विद्वेषमृच्छत्युत वित्तशाट्यात्. Sometimes he is unable to counteract the cold, heat, wind, and rain. Sometimes, while transacting business with others, he gains their enmity because of cheating them for wealth. So, so this is direct. Okay, he is unable to counteract cold, heat, wind, and rain is direct. There is no allegory involved here. And sometimes, while transacting business with others, he gains their enmity. Is also, there is no allegory involved here. It is direct. So while buying and selling because of cheating for money, he develops enemies. क्वचित् क्वचित् क्षीणधनस्तु तस्मिन् शय्यासनस्थानविहारहीनः याचन् परादप्रतिलब्धकामः पारक्य दृष्टिर्लभतेव मानम्. In that forest devoid of wealth, without bed, chair, house, or amusement, he sometimes begs from others. Unsatisfied in his desires, desiring the wealth of others, he becomes disgraced. So, because he does not get enough from begging from others, he desires others' wealth and is consequently disrespected. So, by begging, he does not get sufficient. So, he tries to take other people's wealth. And when you try to take other people's wealth, naturally you will be disgraced. Okay, any quick discussion points, comments, questions? Okay, if there is none, I think we will end it here. I'm ending 15 minutes early. Let Radha Pramod Prabhu take that part. So tomorrow we will continue this discussion. So thank you all very much for your patient listening and your enthusiastic participation. शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, शिल विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर पाद की जय, श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। हरे कृष्ण।